Just say no. Just say no to drugs, because if you don't, you might accidentally get your eyes opened to some of the realities of drug prohibition. Suppose you learn about pot. Pot, as you would come to find out, interacts with cannabinoid receptors in our brains to create euphoric sensations, which is why so many people ingest it for fun. Or you might learn how pot offers a host of medicinal properties, able to treat hundreds of maladies with few to no side effects. Once you learn about pot as a drug, you might look into how it's made, or rather how it's grown, because it is just a plant. It's a beautiful plant called cannabis that grows readily without pesticides or fertilizers, and its seeds can be made into a food. It's a superfood, in fact, high in protein, omega-3s, omega-6s, and it tastes delicious. Then you'll go on to see how this very same plant, cannabis, makes for an amazing building block, able to be made into paper and wood, clothing and textiles, cement, plastic, and even ethanol fuel. So if you reach this point, and if you're paying attention, you're going to start to wonder why a plant that can do medicine and recreation and food and all those essential resources, why on earth is this amazing plant illegal? That pot must be some crazy stuff. But when you discover that pot is actually low risk when compared to alcohol, tobacco, or even over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, well, that's where you're going to start to run into some trouble, because questioning why such a travesty is allowed to persist leads to questioning the system itself. I mean, aren't the laws designed to benefit and protect the public? So why then is this plant that is so obviously beneficial to humankind so actively persecuted by governments from all around the world? And then when you go on to try and answer that little riddle, you're likely to encounter even more startling facts, like how drug prohibition has been enforced at a cost of billions of dollars a year for decades now, yet drugs remain cheaper, stronger, and more readily available than ever before. And that's helping organized crime syndicates to grow powerful off the black market created by drug prohibition. And then on the other side of that same coin, drug enforcement agencies and incarceration facilities will both remain lucrative businesses for as long as certain substances remain criminalized. But should you ever find out how drug prohibition is actually killing more people and destroying way more lives than illicit substances ever have, well, that's when you're on track to see how drugs aren't the real scourge on society. Drug prohibition is the scourge on society. And now, since you're being a naughty drone and you've gone and questioned the establishment, you might just fly right over the falls on your little fact-finding mission to see how the billion-dollar scam known as the war on drugs is just one single leg of the trillion-dollar behemoth of bullshit known as the military-industrial complex. And that's where an entire industry profits by spreading lies to manufacture enemies. And then once they've drummed up enough support, they will release armed combatants to fight what are essentially fabricated foes. So that's why you should just say no to drugs, because if you don't, you might find out how the war on drugs is just a racket. War in general is just a business, and the only reason that they both stick around like dog shit in the treads of a boot is because it would mean the loss of trillions of dollars to millions of people if that were to change. And then to cope with that little tidbit of knowledge, you might just need to go and smoke some drugs.